So, yeah. So, God willing, there'll be a happier ending to this. I just, again, I'm not being entirely optimistic, but we're gonna pray and we're gonna hope for better days for everyone. And speaking of better days, Joseph and his brothers, that's a segue into better days for our siblings. I believe we're at 45. I think that's where I think I had us judiciously sort of dropped off right here, so we can get to the next part of the narrative. Let's join together in our blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei. Amen. Okay. Let's start with our online folks today. Sharon, you want to give that a read? Joseph could no longer.
Sure. Where are we? Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone withdraw from me." So there was no one else about when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. His sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear, and so the news reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still well?" But his brothers could not answer him. So dumbfounded were they on account of him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come forward to me." And when they came forward, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, he whom you sold into Egypt."
Yeah. The big reveal. It's like in that stupid show with the masked dancer, singer, whatever the heck it is. It's like they take off the unicorn hat and it's like someone that you barely remember from 10 years ago. Like that's the show. So so that's what it is. I'm going to reveal myself. It's this very powerful moment and this very sort of beginning. You know, it's that, remember, so this was provoked, by Judah's words, particularly about Jacob, about Joseph's father, sort of finally sort of gets Joseph to a different place. He kicks everyone out of the room, probably because he was less interested in having this moment in front of everybody. That's one interpretation. The other one was perhaps, he didn't want everyone here to sort of, I don't know, it's like family history. It's a lot of dirty laundry, and you try to keep that stuff perhaps a little bit, it's like sort of like a Maury Povich kind of moment, like who is the, brother? It's him. And so this idea of this reveal being done in private, I think makes a lot of sense. Another interpretation was that he didn't want to cause his brothers embarrassment, that it was an extra sort of effort that Joseph makes not to embarrass his brothers in front of all the Egyptians. Not that he hasn't smacking them around for the past 5 chapters, but that being said, a little nicety, so they aren't humiliated when he says, like, you're the dummies who sold me into slavery, no one had to hear all that. So, but he's weeping, he's crying, he's rocking the palace with his cries, and then so once he finally sort of says that I am Joseph, the brothers looking at him like he's a crazy person, like they have no idea what's going on. Like, why is this Egyptian guy a weeping and a wailing here? Like, what's happening? And then he says for them to come a little closer, come forward, and then he sort of repeats it to try to get them, get their heads turned around on this, because it had to have been quite a shock. I don't think they were going, I knew somewhere in the back of my head. No, they have no idea what's happening. They're completely confused in this moment. I had a hint. Undercover boss. Okay. I'm all over the pop culture references this evening. Okay, Gary, you want to keep going here? Now, do not be distressed.
Okay. Now, do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. It is now 2 years that there has been famine in the land, and there are still 5 years to come in which there shall be no yield from tilling. God has sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival on earth and to save your lives in an extraordinary deliverance. So it was not you who sent me here, but God, who has made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of all his household, and ruler over the whole land of Egypt.
Now, this is a very interesting passage because we get here this idea of predestination, of a sense of there's some destiny here, that it wasn't just Joseph's, brothers throwing him into a pit. It was all part of the divine plan. God made this happen, not y'all, so God was the one who sent me here ahead of time to save lives. I don't know. What do we think on this one? Because I don't buy it.
Well, it's a good way to think about life. I mean, to get through hardships, to say, well, maybe it was meant to be, and at least something good came of it. But I don't know. That's pretty hard for somebody like Joseph to say, because he really went through a lot.
He went through a ringer. Yeah.
He went through a lot, but, remember his position now, that he is learning to be diplomatic. And whether he means it or not, it's a very diplomatic thing to say.
I think that's a great way of looking at it as well. That he's of a different stature right now, right? Like it might be easier to say, hey, I came out of it better on the other end. So it's easier to be diplomatic. If he was still in prison or something, maybe it's less, maybe he'd be less charitable. Whether he believes it or not, I think really a great question, right? Because we all want to, as both are sort of intimating, we all want to make meaning, right? We all want things to sort of make sense and have some kind of, point that it's not like life can't be all chaos. I think is what Joseph would have said here, that maybe there was a greater reason. Sort of takes them off the hook.
Doesn't he kind of believe in predetermination also, given the fact that he's predicting the future based on dreams?
Yes. And so, so the question here is it maybe in keeping with maybe his own theology, that here he is, someone who interprets dreams and tries to predict the future. So this idea that there is a plan, right? There's some kind of a blueprint that we're working off of, stage directions, Joseph enters stage right, via the pit, so maybe, it makes sense here. And this connection, with God, right? That it's really God who's in charge, not Joseph's brothers or even Joseph himself. That God was the one who caused this to happen, to become father to Pharaoh. Isn't that nice? Being a protector, being, what does your translation say?
It says father to Pharaoh, and I was going to ask you about that. It's like, why does he call himself father to Pharaoh?
Yeah. Pharaoh, who's your daddy? That's exactly right. Because that's Pharaoh is like really, under his thumb in a way, because Pharaoh's the one who has to almost cater to Joseph and the other way around. So it's I think maybe that's the idea here, and that, or maybe even father as advisor, father as counselor. Is probably the meaning here. Sort of the hand on the shoulder, kindly word in the ear, whispers of some wisdom. That
Isn't
makes.
he older? Isn't he older than Pharaoh at this point?
I don't know if he'd be older, than Pharaoh. Jacob certainly, I think, is going to be older, than Pharaoh. But I'm not sure if we have a sense of that. Okay, we have one more coming in.
Just so no matter whether he's saying the truth or what his reasoning is, this makes Joseph look good no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks good. We know that from an earlier verse.
He looks good physically and looks good, taking
the guilt off.
He's taking the guilt off. He's taking the high ground, right?
Yeah, he's taking the high ground, and he looks good compared to his brothers.
Yeah, he could have made this a lot harder and a lot worse for them.
Yeah.
And I think when you're aiming at, as I think he clearly is, he wants reconciliation. Like he's gotten to that point where he's made a decision, I think, because I don't think he necessarily made it until this point, that he wants a reconciliation. He wants, to get back together with his family. And I think that for him, forgiveness is really important here. And
that's what I was thinking too, Rabbi.
Yeah, and that he needs to be able to forgive them. And part of that might be recognizing that maybe there was a higher purpose, a higher sort of, reason for this happening that was out of the control of everybody, that God was in control. So it might be part of his own personal journey, his personal quest to forgive them and to have this reconciliation. Okay. If we're good with that, we'll keep going a little bit, because I think the brothers are still mute here. They need a little, still there. They're hearing more of this soliloquy. Leah, you want to keep going here? Now hurry.
Sure. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me without delay. You will dwell in the region of Goshen, where you will be near me, you and your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all that is yours. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, that you and your household and all that is yours may not suffer want. You can see for yourselves, and my brother Benjamin for himself, that it is indeed I who am speaking to you. And you must tell my father everything about my high station in Egypt and all that you have seen, and bring my father here with all speed. With that, he embraced his brother Benjamin around the neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. Only then were his brothers able to talk to him.
Okay, a long run there. And yeah, so Joseph is still having to convince them and talk to them. Bring dad, bring the caravan, bring everything. Come on, move to Goshen, moving on up to the east side. Or I think, where's Goshen?
I don't know.
I think it's the west side of Egypt, comparatively, but I have to look it up. So look, dwell in Goshen. No, east side of Egypt, because that way they have to schlep that way to get back to Israel. So in the west, they have to go through the entire country. So anyway, so they have to go, to Goshen, which is where we're gonna be very fruitful and multiply. Spoiler alert for next time around. There's going to be a lot of Israelites in Goshen, and they're going to be, herding the sheep. They're going to be raising the flocks. And they need to be there because it's still famine, right? So now they're going to be closer to have access to the food. You get a little nosh. It's better to be closer to the restaurant here. So it's easier to get the food. And what is that?
Doorbell?
The doorbell has just rung. My goodness. I am shocked, I say, at 7:20 that someone's ringing the bell. As a side note, Coke Zero is much better than Diet Coke. I just got turned on to this. It's not bad at all. I figure if I do a commercial for it, maybe I'll get sponsorship, because it does go to YouTube. And so if I hold it up, maybe we'll get some money from the Coca-Cola people.
Does it have caffeine?
Yeah. Zero sugar, caffeine, wonderful. Aside from all the chemicals in it, but I mean,
What's coming?
I just lost the sponsorship. Easy come, easy go. Yeah, but Temple always needs extra money, so it's always good. Anyway, sorry, neither here nor there. So anyway, he and Benjamin have the big embrace. And, again, the dynamic here I have always found interesting, that while Benjamin is his only, full brother, he's also the brother that he had least relationship with, because he was with his older brothers a lot more. Benjamin was still very little when he was thrown into the pit and sold. But obviously he has that soft spot for Benjamin. And so they're the ones who connect first, and have the hug moment here. And then once he does that, he embraces, like he's the one from an action standpoint, like Joseph is doing everything. Like Joseph's doing all of the talking, Joseph's giving the physical sort of commands, like Joseph's doing the movement, and like Joseph is the one who makes the first move, so to speak, to sort of grab hold of Benjamin and have the hug, and then he sort of goes to his brothers and gives them, the same affection, the same embrace. And then finally we're there, like we've made it. So this has been the brothers haven't said a darn word. They haven't said not going to say a word yet for a little while too. It's all Joseph, sort of speaking. He's the center. He's at center stage here, and the brothers are sort of just like listening to him and reacting to him, which makes Joseph the one with all the power, which is true. He has all the power.
It's his position.
Yeah, it's his position. And again, because he's in the moral high ground, sort of as well, like he's the one sort of doing all of the talking, all the explaining. One would think the brothers would take a nice big sigh of relief and they weren't off to the gallows or something. But reconciliation, like Joseph could very easily just like make this a lot worse. Hey, remember me?
Boy, was I mad that day.
Yeah, Joseph strikes back.
Yeah, where's my coat?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. Where's my coat?
It's like
Can I ask a question?
I can just like see him all like decked out. How do you like me now? So, but no, he takes the high ground. He's a good dude. And so again, we have this moment, right, of revelation and reconciliation and reconnection, and we jump scenes, like we're like, we have that moment with Joseph and his brothers, and now we're just switching scenes. We're not going to Pharaoh's palace. So again, there's no rebuttal, there's no any conversation from Joseph's brothers. Now it goes to Pharaoh's palace, and Pharaoh gets the word. Pharaoh gets news of this wonderful reconciliation he has nothing to do with. And now he gets to react as well. Melissa, you want to pick up here? The news reached.
I think Karen had a question.
Oh, sorry, Karen.
Oh, that's okay. I was late anyway. I forgot. My question is, if Joseph was such a futurist and he could tell from the dreams and everything else, why didn't he predict the enslavement or anything like that?
Oh, I guess he just doesn't have all the information, right? You only see so much, Karen. Come on, you want that would ruin the story.
He had superpowers, right?
Superpowers. Oh yeah. I guess he missed that one. He didn't.
Okay.
The magic 8 ball that day wasn't working. Ask again later. Maybe is what he got.
Yeah.
No, he has very specific dreams. I don't think it's it's meant to say that Joseph can see everything in the future. Sort of like Bran Stark of Winterfell, or whatever it might be. Where there's another one, another cultural reference. But I don't think he has that. I think he has very specific ability to sort of like interpret dreams. But I don't think he necessarily has the ability that sight everything. But it, but he's there and he's happy. He's feeling good, feeling strong. And now, I don't know. It's an interesting passage enough because it's time to have the whole family sort of move down and still have one more big reconciliation sort of moment to come here once Jacob gets himself down to Goshen, but let's see how we get there. So Melissa, you want to pick up the news reached?
News reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his courtiers were pleased, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do as follows. Load up your beasts and go at once to the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall live off the fat of the land. And you are bidden to add, do as follows: take from the land of Egypt wagons for your children and your wives, and bring your father here. And never mind your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt shall be yours.
That's so sweet, right? I mean, Pharaoh's rolling out the red carpet. Doesn't end well, but rolling out the red carpet, get everyone up, schlep them to Egypt, and you're going to live off the fat of the land. That's not bad at all.
Joseph's going to be happy Pharaoh said that, since Joseph already promised them that.
Yeah, so like Joseph already said, hey, come on down, right? So you might as well check with the big boss as well. Pharaoh is still Pharaoh. And then just more of the same set of instructions. Get wagons for your children, the wives, bring everyone, and just bring the shit on your back. We'll take care of you here in Egypt.
The first reference to living off the fat of the land.
So the question was, is that the first reference to living off the fat of the land? I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at Esau's blessing, because I think Esau had a little bit of that, and Ishmael as well. I think some sort of references to living off the land, and its produce and excesses, but I'm not sure.
Just thinking of what's it called, the book
Steinbeck's
of Mice and Men.
Of Mice and
Where
Men.
he keeps repeating that that's where we live off the fat of the
Live
land.
off the fat of the land, Delicious. Better than the fat on the corned beef.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not.
I like the fat.
Yeah, I do like fatty corned beef. Anyway, Barbara, you want to pick up here the sons of Israel?
Sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them wagons as Pharaoh had commanded, and he supplied them with provisions for the journey. To each of them, moreover, he gave a change of clothing. But to Benjamin, he gave 300 pieces of silver and several changes of clothing. And to his father, he sent the following: 10 he-asses laden with the best things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. And he sent his brothers off on their way and told them, do not be quarrelsome on the way.
Because as is their want. As is their want, jerky. So, and I think maybe that's partly because, again, like no one ever learns. That's what's so much fun about Genesis, is that like there's not a lot of learning. There's a lot of generational trauma, and it keeps on sort of building upon itself. So of course, Joseph gives them the wagons and he says, oh, by the way, Benjamin, here's an extra 300 pieces of silver. Go buy yourself something pretty, and like several changes of clothing. So like another reference to the tunics and the clothes, Joseph had his special coat, and I was giving Benjamin extra changes of clothing. So I think maybe that's why he has to say, don't be quarrelsome, like don't beat up Benjamin, and take away his coat and his money,
It's in quotes and everything.
Yeah, do not be quarrelsome on the way. Again, it's one of those things that just pops out at me, that 10 of these animals here that are given the best things of Egypt, which would be what?
The 10 she-asses.
Yeah, I don't know, like he's laden with the best things of Egypt. Hummus, like I don't know what are the best things of Egypt at that point. Maybe some spices, linens. Yeah, I don't know what it's gonna be, whatever it is. And the other one's more specific: the grain, the bread, blah blah blah. So they're gonna do it. They're going. Do not be quarrelsome on the way. Be nice to each other. Is it just that hard to be nice? You need an extra bit of instruction.
You think that was a threat?
Maybe a reminder, or maybe a warning. It's just don't make me regret my decision, right? To be nice and friendly. Make sure you really have learned your lesson. I think, and it's an interesting idea, of course, and I think it was mentioned a couple of times already, of like, is there really trust between the brothers? Has Joseph really forgiven? Have the brothers really changed? Are they really simpatico at this point? Or, there's a lot of damage to the relationship. And so I think it's the question for both parties is, like, can we trust each other? Is everything hunky-dory again after this moment of forgiveness, or is there still just a little bit of tension in the air? Thanksgiving will never be the same, kind of, right? Where you can forgive, but it doesn't mean that you forget. And it doesn't mean that the relationship goes back to where it was before, that everything is sort of erased. So I think that, and this plays out towards the end of the book of Genesis, that there's still some of that lingering doubt and lingering tension. We saw this a few weeks back with Jacob and Esau, right? Where it's like they reconcile, but don't really want to spend a lot of time with each other. It's like all's forgiven, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll send each other an email once in a while, and whatever it is, but we're not throwing the old pigskin around in the backyard. Of course they couldn't anyway, since they can't have the pigskin. But so I don't know.
Not kosher yet.
Not yet, that's true, to be fair. They aren't kosher yet. They could throw on the pigskin. But I think that's what's here. I just feel like we sort of read this and sort of there's an underlying discomfort that still exists.
Trust but verify.
Yeah, trust but verify.
Right.
And a little extra, again, I guess one could even read it maybe as a little passive aggressive, but as I once was told, sometimes passive aggressive is better than aggressive aggressive. There's less blood spilled than passive aggression. So,
With the quarrels, when he says, don't be quarrelsome,
yeah.
I think he's reminding them that he knows who they are, that they have a tendency to be quarrelsome. I know who you are. I know how you behave. Don't act like yourself. So
I'm with you, but I think that's almost like what's a little troubling in a way. It's like I'm trying to think of a parallel, in my head, but it's like, if my wife burnt the roast, one time, like last year, and every time she cooks a roast from then on, I tell her, watch the roast, like don't burn it again like you did last time. It's gonna get old really fast. Yeah, exactly.
He's gonna start burning you.
Yeah, well, that's why I use that one instead of watch your driving, because that's an actual problem. The roast isn't the problem. But because I do all the cooking. But it's like it's like that. It's that kind of thing. It's like I think Lee, you have it right. Like where he's sort of reminding them, sort of having the back of the mind of their nature, sort of what they did, but like. Is that forgiveness then? I think it's the question, right? Like, is that like what reconciliation looks like if you're constantly reminding somebody of their past transgression or whatever it might be? Like, it doesn't usually end well. Like part of the idea of forgiveness is that like you don't keep bringing it up again. And so that's why I just wonder how much forgiveness or reconciliation is there, or is it still, as I think it is, in this case and in all cases, frankly, a process. There's very rarely, I think, that moment of this like immediate reconciliation where everything goes back to the way it was. There's usually a little stuff that's left over that works its way out through time. Once everything that's said has needed, and once everything that has needed to be said was said. And I think Joseph sort of did it. Like Joseph Joseph's the wrong party. Joseph's the one who's working through it, and maybe it's just part of him working through it is taking a little extra needle, a little jab into the brother's rib cage. Remember, don't be terrible because you used to be terrible. So maybe don't do it anymore.
Sell each other into the Can you make it back to town without selling someone into slavery?
He's lucky he's not Michael Corleone.
That's right.
They're lucky.
Oh, definitely. I've always said it. I feel like Ruben often comes off as Fredo. Reuben is definitely Fredo of the family. I feel it in all of his texts. That's what it's like. I knew it was you. Okay. See, all up at the pop culture. That wasn't me this time. Okay. Karen, gonna pick up here. They went up.
They went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. And they told him, Joseph is still alive. Yes, he is, ruler over the whole land of Egypt. His heart went numb, for he did not believe them. But when they recounted all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Enoch, said Israel. He's Jacob in 1 second, and the next second he's Israel. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die.
Time to schlep out. You read this thing, you're worried they're going to give him a heart attack. It's like it's a lot of information, and they don't go over the whole story, yet. I'm trying to remember if they ever do go through the whole story of what they did, sort of that bigger confession to Jacob. But they sort of they tell the story and the whole thing, and Jacob sees the wagons. It's like, okay, let's go.
Didn't they tell him that Joseph was ripped apart by
yes
animals?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm saying. So they don't really fill in the blanks of, by the way, we sort of remember when we told you he was viciously mauled by beasts and stuff, our bad, turns out he's fine. And he's doing awesome in Egypt. So they sort of maybe skip over that part, that they don't sort of go into that whole dialogue with him on what actually happened. But he's excited and he's going down to Egypt, put grandpa in the car. It's time to go. Got a time to schlep out. So Rick, we're on 46, the beginning.
So Israel set out with all that was his, and he came to Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God called to Israel in a vision by night, Jacob, Jacob. He answered, here. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will make you there into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I myself will also bring you back. And Joseph's hand shall close your eyes.
Okay.
Talking about in between.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, and don't worry about those 400 years in the middle, because that's not going to be great. But again, so he's ready to go, and he's back to Beersheba. The Bible likes Beersheba, so that's a nice place to be. All of these wells, it's the land of the 7 wells, and it's played a role in the different patriarchs' lives. And he gets a dream, he gets a vision. It's like good old days. Jacob gets a vision. He gets even the double name, Jacob. What now? Jacob. Oh, hi God. It's like it's old. It's hard of hearing by this time, so you have to call him twice. And it says, "Here I am," and then I'm the God. Blah 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 blah. Don't worry about the trip. I know it's a schlep. I know it's a long way down to Egypt, but it's going to be great. You're going to be a great nation. I'm going to come with you, and I'll bring you back. But there's a middle bit there. Don't worry about it. We'll skip over that. And Joseph will be the one to put you to tend to you in your closing moments. Sweet enough, I think. And I think putting God back into the story gives it's primarily there to give Jacob that sense of comfort, because again, it's a big shock and it's a big journey. And so having God sort of re-enter the fray here to talk to Jacob is probably a very calming and comforting experience for him. So
he doesn't tell him the downside, though, does he?
No, I'm saying he skips over that bit, like that part we're not going to worry about at this moment. Okay. He's not going to see it anyway, so. Can
I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
Sacrifices.
Yeah. They're delicious.
When it just doesn't seem like a very I know that there was the sacrifice that Abraham was about to make and ended up
Yeah.
killing the animal. But do we as a people make sacrifice? We make personal sacrifices, but we don't go around killing animals and offering them up.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, but we did, and that was okay.
Oh, it's
Aren't you-
awesome. It's fantastic.
That's what they
Oh,
did.
come on. That was entertainment.
People who make sacrifices,
Yeah.
as kids, we get a little concerned about what they're
Yeah.
doing.
Now we don't like it. I mean, now like, I always joke. It's like, if that was done today, Rabbi arrested at local petting zoo. Like, it's just like you don't
No
want that.
lamb for Passover.
Yeah, like if you don't see, he's barred from Zoo Tampa for life. But we don't do it now. But no, I mean, sacrifices, you have to remember. So in the ancient Near East, in the culture, sacrifices were common, as a way to give thanks to God. For the Israelites,
That's what I'm talking about.
they create a sacrificial system that is their own, right? So all these sacrifices that happen now, it's sort of like what you do, right? Like it's part of the greater societal context. But once we get to Leviticus, then we get a very unique, Israelite worship experience through sacrifice, where there's a greater system. There's 5 kinds of sacrifices. These are the animals that you can sacrifice. These ones you can sacrifice. As a side note, archaeologists, when they are out there sort of in the wilderness of, Sinai and wherever else, they dig, obviously that's what they do. They dig up a lot of stuff, right? And sometimes they find sacrificial pits, and they can tell because there's bones, of all these animals there. So it's a sacrificial pit. It was a site. And they know that it's an Israelite site. How do they know it's an Israelite site? The type of animals. If there's no pig there, whatever it is, they know that's likely an Israelite sacrificial pit, as opposed to a Philistine or a Canaanite or a Moabite or a Jebusite or an Edomite or any other ite that you want. But no, they love sacrifices back then. And for us, at least, we stopped doing humans that we didn't start it, hopefully, but with any human sacrifices, other people did that, where they would do a child sacrifice, blood sacrifice, where you would dance around whatever idol it might have been and slash at your arms and slash at your torso so blood would flow, because blood is sacred, right? And so for the Jewish, for the Israelite tradition, the blood, had to be dispensed of a certain way, because blood had power to it, but also a lot of impurity. And so the blood had to be outside the camp more often than not, for some of these sacrifices, at least, or burned up entirely. So the burned up entirely sacrifices, that was a little rougher because, again, there was no food left over. That's a problem. But you have to imagine it being just like a barbecue. Like everyone's like coming and they're excited and they would sacrifice the animal, and some of the parts would be burned up and some would be eaten, by the priests and the Levites who couldn't have other jobs. They couldn't make a living, right? So they had to be fed. Someone had to give them something to eat. And so the sacrifices helped, literally sustain the priestly class and the Levites and all their folks who couldn't work, and they weren't inheriting any land. So the sacrifices had that dual purpose of worship. I'm offering up, something to God. I'm giving up something that is important to me as a way of showing my love and commitment, to God. That was very powerful, or if you did something wrong, here's how I atone. I'm going to give you have to remember, these animals, like these oxen they were killing, this is expensive stuff. It's like, almost like a car, it's like these things were very, very expensive. And if you had them and were sacrificing them, means that you had hopefully more than one of them, because it makes a big difference. These were big beasts of burden that could do a lot for you. And so that's why they had different levels of sacrifice. If you didn't have an ox, you could sacrifice a goat. If you didn't have a goat, you could do a chicken. If you didn't have a chicken, you could do something else. That way it could be a little bit more, what's I'm looking for, like equitable, that everyone could sort of have the ability to do it.
Progressive income tax.
Progressive, yeah, it's a progressive tax, so but no, it was a really major part of Israelite religion once they created the system of how to sacrifice, and it became so ingrained that our prayer service is based out of the sacrificial model. The reason why Jews pray 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, that's when you sacrifice, was morning, noon, and night. That's sort of how some of that developed right now is based on sacrifice.
Also known as breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Had to eat.
Yeah.
When you see the mincha sacrifice is literally like waffles, like they're making pancakes, on the altar, and then the priests have it with a little, frankincense on top, a little whatever it is, give it a little flavor, little maple syrup, and that's breakfast. Then you have your big meal later in the day, when they sacrifice the goat, a nice little big chunk of lamb. I'm getting hungry. This is, and they say God enjoys the smell, that comes in Leviticus, and it comes in actually think even earlier, but God enjoys the smell, the reach nikoach, the sweet savory smell goes up to heaven. That's why I say it tongue in cheek, but I literally think about barbecue. I think about driving up to a barbecue shack and you sort of smell, that smells really good, wood fire, meat.
It's actually genetic for Jews.
Oh, it's a problem. Yeah.
I thought that was Chinese food.
Oh, but again, Chinese. Well, I'm not that picky. But that being said, it's like I could find that sweet, savory smell in more than one place, in Chinese food as well. But it's it was a huge part of their worship and their understanding of how they're connecting to God. I like to think, obviously, that we have. That prayer had to come anyway from an evolutionary standpoint in worship. Prayer had to supplement to succeed, I should say, sacrifices, because there was no temple. The temple got destroyed, so you can't, and so you have to have something that comes next. But I'd like to think that we're doing a little better now. That's why I can never understand the Orthodox movement in particular, like when they pray for the restoration of the temple being built again and sacrifices. I'm like, really? Do we really want that? Do we really want to go back to animal sacrifice?
Depends on whether you be priest or a Levite or
I don't know. I don't think I'd do well. I feel like I'd be unemployed if I had to be the doing the sacrifices. I that's not my area, to say the least. It's like, Rabbi, come slaughter this chicken. It's like, and that would be easier comparatively, I think, than the goats and the oxen, whatever it might be. But I don't think I'd do well. I got to tell you, not my game. Once it's under plastic, that's fine. Then I'm okay. But before that, I don't need it. Just, give it to me at Publix. That's fine. But I'm not going out there slaying my own animals. That's not a thing. There's actually a Hebrew word, and I wish I remember what it was, but it's one of those words only used, I think, once the entire time to pinch the head off a dove. So you have to flick its head off, so you can just spray the blood around. It's kind of a Tarantino film, it's I don't know. Not for me.
But thinking of the Ukraine, our grandmothers used to go out and kill the chicken.
Yeah, I'm saying, it's generational, right? I mean, people do it today. I'm just saying it's not my home run swing. I'll just, I'll go to Popeyes. It'll be just fine. I don't. I haven't been to Popeyes in years. I don't know where that came from. But anyway,
my grandmother had a kosher butcher shop, and they came in and kosher killed the chickens, and that was pretty disgusting.
No, look, I mean, you can give it a Google later on. Lobel's Fine Meats. My second cousin, 800 removed, whatever it might be, it was my grandfather's cousin, was a butcher, and it used to be a kosher butcher. But times are a-changing. It's no longer a kosher butcher, but it's in Manhattan on Madison and Avenue in the 80s, whatever it is. Very hoity-toity. And they have a little shop at Yankee Stadium on the lower bowl. You can get your $25 prime rib sandwich. It's like a 3-bite sandwich. from Lobel's meats, from Lobel's butcher. So I guess it is in my blood somewhere. But again, nah, I don't think it's happening. So again, I can wait for Messiah if that means return to sacrifices. I can wait.
Rabbi, when did it end? Was it
When
this,
did
the
when
temple?
did it, yeah? So the sacrificial system of those priests and Levites were put into pretty permanent unemployment when the Romans destroyed the temple. Once the Romans blew everything up, it was hard to do it. Sort of the rabbis had the advantage of not needing a temple for worship and still being alive. So those two things that helped them win the theological battle. Being alive and not needing the temple, because the Romans basically killed everyone else. So the rabbis were able to sort of do their thing and focus on study and prayer and and law. Where the priestly class, the Sadducees, they're basically getting put out of business, by the Roman emperor when they destroy everything in 70. So that's when it changed. But there was always that idea, that sort of yearning. Maybe one day we can do it again. They can have it. It's fine. I don't need it. I'll take the offering of my lips. That's the offering. But I don't need to be there with a knife and a smock. I don't think I own a smock. I have an apron somewhere, but not a smock. Are they the same? An apron and a smock?
No, a smock is larger and usually has more, sometimes it has sleeves and it just covers more.
Yeah, because a butcher has a smock, right? Or what does a blacksmith have? We're off the beaten track. Yeah,
A leather apron.
A leather apron.
Yes. Okay.
So Lobel's are the
I also can't do
six
that. So if I in medieval times, I would not have fared well. I think it's basically how this is going. I'm not sure of my skill set in medieval times. We'll give Devar Torah for food. It's not exactly like maybe the best thing. Anyway, Jacob, after the rabbi rambles, set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel put their father Jacob and their children and their wives. I love the imagery. It's like this big road trip they're all having. Everyone get in the car. The wives and the wagons, that Pharaoh had sent to transport him, took along their livestock and the wealth they had amassed in Canaan. They had some money, remember. Again, that's also part of the story, that the Israelites aren't coming, even though Pharaoh said you have to bring yourselves, like they have some cash. They're bringing it with them, and Jacob and all his offering came with him to Egypt. Then he brought with him his sons and grandsons, his daughters and granddaughters. Then the biblical author decides to tell us the name of every single person in the family. So we're just going to skip that a little bit, but you can just sort of see, like, here's Reuben, and here are his sons, Enoch, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi, and Shimon's sons, and blah, 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 blah. And it sort of keeps going for a while. And I wish I could tell you there's an interesting part of this, but there isn't. It's just sort of the names. So this sort of just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. I'm just going to let Kelly in here. Keeps going. Went too far.
This is good. You're a genealogist.
Yeah, if you're a genealogist, it's awesome, and it does give you some sense of like who these people are. Though they, as I'll mention, like this is also it for them, right? Because once we get to Egypt and once we sort of have a little more of Jacob and his brothers and the reconciliation, Joseph and his brothers and his father and the reconciliation, then we're hitting the fast forward button, like then. So all these people that are named are dead. Like they don't come back again, in the conversation, really any of them. And so they all get down to Egypt, and it says the total here of Jacob's household who came to Egypt was 70 people. So not a huge crew of folk, but it's a group. It's a group.
More than one car.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice little group. It's a big family reunion. you certainly have to put out a bigger spread for 70. I mean, like that's a big group. And so they're there in Goshen, and then they meet each other again. Joseph ordered his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. Hug, hug, kiss, kiss. And they presented himself to him, and embracing him around the neck, they wept for a good while, I'd imagine so. And then Israel, always one to, lighten the mood, said to Joseph, "Now I can die, having seen for myself that you are alive." "Thanks, Dad. Maybe give me a little bit of time here, to savor this moment." And Jacob's there, like looking for his deathbed, which is going to come sooner than later, to be fair. But
then he can kill all his brothers.
Yeah, they can kill all of his brothers. And so for the last little bit here, Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I'll go tell the news to Pharaoh. Hey, everyone's here. My brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan, they've come to me. They happen to be shepherds. They've always been breeders of livestock, and they've brought with them their flocks and herds and all that is theirs. So when Pharaoh summons you and asks, what is your occupation? You shall answer, servants have been breeders of livestock, blah, 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 from the start until now, both we and our fathers, so you may stay in the land of Goshen. For shepherds are abhorrent to Egyptians." A little bit of trivia there. The Egyptians don't love shepherds. We'll stop there because we're going to be on 47, next time around. The idea being that the Egyptians had a special relationship with some of these farm animals, which sounded weirder than I intended. No, that's not what I had.
Want to know.
That's a whole nother story. But no, there's a sense of like the Godhead, that like the bulls and the rams were like part of the Egyptian, Godhead. And so like that, so they didn't like the fact that people would use them for farming. I think sheep as well were also part of like, if how the Hindus, have cows, as sacred, right? And so the Egyptians had some of these animals as sort of part of their pantheon. So they weren't a big fan of shepherds. I think that was the crux of the problem. So that's the issue there. Why shepherds are sort of abhorrent, like they don't want to hang out with you, which is what they want in a way. Sort of like, so you hang out in Goshen, you chill there, and you create sort of a life for yourself in that part of the world. But you don't have to interact or engage with Egypt all the time either. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. You're sort of Egypt adjacent, you're Egypt light, but you're not really in Egypt proper with dealing with the day to day, because this land is good for shepherding and they don't deal with shepherds. So you guys, you do you, kind of in Goshen, and it'll be great. Spoiler alert: it wasn't great after a while. Good for a few years, but obviously it didn't end so well in Egypt. With that
Rabbi?
said, yeah.
No, I was going to say, actually, an attitude like that might be something that we could use as a lesson for today. You be you, stay there, we'll respect you, you be you. Something that a lot of countries have to learn today.
I like the you be you part,
Yeah.
And certainly, it's good to have a sense of autonomy and independence, but it's so nice to be as well. This is a little bit maybe segregationalist to my liking, but certainly the you be you part, I'm all in. I think that's really nice. You should be you, and you shouldn't be bothered, oppressed because of who you are. That's certainly, I think, a really good lesson. Okay, my friends, that sort of ends our Bible study this week. We will catch you all next week. We're in March already. How did this happen?
As of today.
My goodness. So yes, we will be back, same bat time, same bat channel next week.
Hey, thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
See y'all later. We're going to stick on for Bible study, those who are sticking around, and we'll catch the rest of you next week.
Have a good night.